7 months her baby had screamed through every night. Every nanny had failed. Every expert had given up. Sarah had begun to believe something was broken inside her daughter, or worse, inside herself. But now in the arms of a complete stranger, little Lily slept like she had finally found home. The man looked up. His eyes held no fear, no apology, just a quiet certainty that made Sarah's skin prickle. He sat in her rocking chair, broad-shouldered, dressed in a gray sweater, frayed at the cuffs and mended at the shoulder by hand. His weathered hands were impossibly steady as they held her 7-month-old daughter. Lily's tiny fist gripped his thumb as if it had always been hers to hold. Sarah's designer purse slipped from her fingers. It thudded against the Persian rug. The sound felt like a gunshot in the stillness. "Who are you?" Her voice cracked, trembling with panic, with rage, with something she couldn't name. "And why does my daughter trust you more than she trusts me?" The question hung in the air, raw, painful, a confession she hadn't meant to make. The stranger didn't startle. He didn't rush to explain. His eyes lifted to meet hers, deep, shadowed, carrying a quiet exhaustion she recognized in her own mirror every morning. "Garrett Holloway," he said. His voice was low, calm, like worn velvet. "The agency sent me. Your housekeeper called around 10. Said you'd been up 3 nights straight. Said your daughter wouldn't stop crying and you wouldn't ask for help." Sarah's pulse spiked. Her throat tightened. Margaret had no right. "No one touches my daughter but me. No one." But even as she said it, she heard how hollow the words sounded. Because here was proof of her failure. A stranger succeeding where she had collapsed night after night. Garrett adjusted Lily gently, never breaking the rhythm of the rocking chair. She was crying so hard she could barely breathe when I walked in, red-faced, gasping. I wasn't going to stand in the hallway and listen to that. The honesty hit Sarah like a blow. Her arms reached out, trembling. "Give her to me, now." For the first time, Garrett's jaw tightened, but he didn't move to obey. "Not yet. Lay her down too soon. She'll startle awake and scream until dawn. You don't want that." "Neither does she." Sarah stopped cold. The refusal wasn't defiance. It was truth. And she hated that he was right. She hated that she didn't know what he knew. Lily stirred against his chest, let out a soft sigh, then settled deeper into sleep. The sound was so peaceful it made Sarah's chest ache. She had hired 6 nannies with perfect resumes, paid 3 sleep specialists, read 12 books on infant care. Not one of them had managed this. "You make it look easy," she whispered. Her voice broke on the last word. "It's not easy." Garrett's eyes stayed on Lily. "It's just practice and pain." He rose slowly, kept Lily pressed against his chest. Then he carried her to the crib with movements so fluid they seemed like water finding its level. Sarah watched as he lowered her daughter onto the mattress, inch by inch, like laying down something precious beyond measure.
"I'm her mother, but tonight she's afraid of me."
Not because of you. Because you're too exhausted.
Then he did something that stopped her breath. He placed his warm palm on Lily's chest and waited. 30 seconds passed. He didn't move. Another 30 seconds. Still he waited. His hand rose so slowly that Sarah couldn't tell the exact moment he let go. It was like watching the tide withdraw, gentle, inevitable, leaving the shore undisturbed. Lily's mouth made a tiny searching motion. Her fingers opened, closed, opened again, and stilled. She didn't wake. She didn't cry. Sarah pressed her knuckles to her lips, blinked hard. A stupid thing to cry over. A baby sleeping. Except it wasn't stupid. It was the one thing she couldn't buy. Couldn't will into existence. Couldn't control no matter how hard she tried. And now it was here, carried into this room by a man in a frayed sweater. They stood in the kitchen at 2 in the morning, tea steaming between them. The city glittered far below the penthouse windows like scattered diamonds on black velvet. Sarah held her cup but didn't drink. Her hands had finally stopped shaking. "The 30 seconds," she said quietly. "Then another 30. What is that?" "Survival knowledge," Garrett replied. "Babies need to feel you're still there, even when you're letting go. Too fast and they panic. Too slow and they fight it. You find the rhythm, you count, you wait." "How do you know these things?" His eyes darkened. He stared into his cup for a long moment. "My wife Sarah died when our son was 3 months old. Complications after delivery. One day she was laughing in our kitchen, the next she was gone." The words landed heavy in the quiet room. "I was alone with a baby who didn't understand why the world had broken in half. No family nearby, no money for night nurses, just me and Connor and all those dark hours between midnight and dawn." Sarah's throat burned. She thought of her own nights, slumped on the nursery floor, mascara streaking down her face, begging Lily to drink, to sleep, to just stop screaming. She had staff, she had money, she had everything except the one thing that mattered, someone who understood. "She wouldn't eat for me tonight," Sarah heard herself say. The confession pulled from her like thread from a frayed seam. She arched her back and screamed like I was hurting her. "I'm her mother, and she doesn't want me." "That's because you were terrified." Garrett's voice held no judgment, no pity. "Babies feel everything. Your stress, your exhaustion, your fear that you're failing. Sometimes they just need someone calm enough to tell them they're safe." "Safe," the word stung. "I don't even know what that feels like anymore." The admission hung between them, heavier than the silence. "Everyone thinks I have everything," Sarah continued. "The penthouse, the company, the magazine covers, but I've been drowning for months, and no one noticed. No one except my housekeeper." Garrett set down his cup. His eyes found hers with unsettling steadiness. "Drowning people learn to smile. It's the only way to keep others from panicking." Sarah looked at him then, really looked, not at a stranger, not at an employee, not at a problem to solve, at a person who understood the shape of her darkness because he had lived in his own. "Why this work?" she asked. "After everything you lost? Why spend your nights with other people's crying babies?" "Because I've been through nights where I thought I wouldn't survive, where my son's crying nearly broke me in half." He paused. "If I can help someone else avoid that darkness, even for one night, it's worth it." Before he left, Garrett wrote on a small piece of paper. His handwriting was neat, measured. He listed everything like,
How did you learn all this?
By being left alone with a child after my wife passed away.
like a valve. Warm bottle to just below body temperature. Hold vertical. Pause at 3 minutes for burp. Transfer after first limb drop. Hand on chest 90 seconds. White noise low. At the bottom, he added one final line. Kiss before call. Sarah stared at it, read it twice, 3 times. What does this mean? She pointed to the last line. It means kiss your daughter before your first meeting of the day, before the world takes you away from her. Let that be the last thing she remembers. Sarah folded the paper, smaller than it needed to be, tucked it against her heart like something precious. At the door, Garrett paused. Your housekeeper mentioned something about collectors showing up last week, people asking questions. Sarah's face hardened, her armor sliding back into place. My late husband left complications. I'm handling it. Are you? His voice was gentle but direct, because the way she described it, they didn't sound like people who take no for an answer. The words scraped against a wound she kept hidden, but she lifted her chin. Good night, Mr. Holloway. He nodded, stepped into the elevator. The doors closed on his steady gaze. Sarah stood alone in the glowing corridor. The penthouse stretched behind her, empty, silent. She walked back to the nursery, stood over the crib, watched her daughter sleep. For the first time in 7 months, she didn't feel dread. At 6 in the morning, when the first light touched the windows, she picked up her phone, typed one word, yes, and sent it before she could change her mind. But as she set down the phone, another notification appeared. An email from her attorney, marked urgent. The subject line made her blood run cold. Asset seizure notice. Immediate action required. Someone was coming for everything she had built, and they weren't going to wait. 2 weeks passed. Something shifted in the penthouse. Something Sarah couldn't quite name. Garrett came every morning now. He took Lily to the fountain in the plaza below, taught her to watch pigeons gather for crumbs, held her while she squealed at birds that fluttered too close. Lily laughed. Actually laughed. A sound Sarah had never heard. A sound that made her chest crack open in the best possible way. The routine notes multiplied on the refrigerator, each one updated, each one ending with the same 3 words: kiss before call. Sarah started sleeping again. 4 hours, then 5, then 6. The shadows under her eyes faded. Her hands steadied. She found herself humming in the elevator, singing softly to Lily before board meetings. She was changing. She felt it in her bones. But she didn't know yet how much more would change. Connor arrived on a Saturday. Garrett brought his son to the penthouse. An 8-year-old boy with brown hair like his father and blue eyes like the mother he barely remembered. He carried a book about the solar system, held it against his chest like armor. Connor, Garrett said, this is Miss Sarah. And this is Lily. The boy studied Sarah with serious eyes, then looked down at Lily in her bouncy seat. He crouched beside her, carefully extended one finger. Lily grabbed it, held on tight, looked up at him with something like wonder. Dad, Connor's voice was solemn. I think she likes me. Sarah brought water and cookies, watched the boy sit beside Lily on the playmat, watched him show her pictures of planets while she babbled and drooled. Then Connor looked up at her, his eyes clear and deep. Miss Sarah, does Lily know my dad's heart has been broken before? The question hit her like a wave. She didn't know how to answer. I'm not sure, sweetheart. Connor nodded slowly, as if he understood something beyond his years. Because broken hearts are the best at holding babies. They know how important it is not to let go. Sarah had to turn away. Her eyes burned, her throat closed. When she looked back, Garrett was watching his son, his own eyes glistening. And she understood then that this little boy had seen his father's pain, had watched him put himself back together piece by piece, had learned something about love that most adults never grasped, that the people who have lost...
You're talking about my daughter!
Then this isn't just work anymore. This is family.
The most are often the ones who hold on the tightest. 3 days later, the storm arrived. Sarah woke to pounding at the door. 6:45 in the morning. The sound cracked through the penthouse like gunshots. Garrett was already moving, already positioned between her and whatever waited outside. 2 men in dark suits stood in the hallway, eyes cold, posture sharp. A third man behind them held a clipboard. Ms. Blackwell, we have documents requiring immediate attention. Asset seizure orders. Open up. Sarah's heart slammed against her ribs. Behind her, Lily began to cry. Garrett stepped forward, his voice cut through the chaos. Calm, controlled, lethal. Those documents require proper legal service, not intimidation at 6:45 in the morning. Step back, one of the men sneered. And who the hell are you? Someone who knows what legitimate law enforcement looks like. And this isn't it. The clipboard man smiled, a cold reptilian expression. This isn't over, Ms. Blackwell. You have 2 weeks. After that, we take what's owed. He paused. Let the silence stretch. Including your daughter's trust fund. Sarah couldn't breathe, couldn't move. They had mentioned Lily, threatened her daughter. Garrett didn't flinch. Leave, now. Or the next conversation happens with Seattle PD. They retreated, slowly, but the threat hung in the air like poison. When the elevator doors closed, Sarah sagged against the wall. Her whole body trembled. They mentioned Lily. Her voice was barely a whisper. They're going after my daughter. Garrett's jaw was tight, his eyes hard. Then we need to find out who's really behind this, because those weren't collectors, those were professionals. The answer came 3 days later. Garrett spread files across the dining table. Documents, photographs, transaction records. His contacts from the military had worked around the clock. Every attack traces back to one man. He pointed to a name circled in red. Howard Mercer, Mercer Capital. Sarah's face went pale. She knew that name. Everyone in Seattle business circles knew that name. He was your husband's biggest rival, Garrett continued. When Richard died, Mercer saw an opportunity. He's been slowly strangling your company for months, waiting for you to collapse so he can buy it for pennies? The debts, Sarah's voice was hollow. Richard always said they were manageable, but if someone was manipulating the numbers from outside, then your husband might not have been as reckless as everyone believes. The realization crashed over her. Richard hadn't failed her. He had been targeted. They both had, but Garrett wasn't finished. There's something else. His voice changed, tighter, more controlled. My contacts found records of Mercer's company being investigated 3 years ago. Workplace safety violations. The lead investigator was a cop named David Holloway. Sarah frowned. Holloway? Like my brother. The words were barely audible. He died in a car accident 2 years ago. The case was dropped. The room fell silent. The weight of what he was saying pressed down on both of them. This wasn't just business anymore. It was personal, for both of them. The media war erupted within days. Headlines screamed across every screen. Debt shadows Blackwell fortune. Mystery man living with Blackwell heiress. Who is Garrett Holloway? Then came the kill shot. At a press conference meant to reassure investors, a reporter asked the question that changed everything. Ms. Blackwell, isn't it true that your husband's debts are secured against your daughter's trust fund? If you fail, Lily...
I used to think I had to be strong on my own.
And now?
Now I know. Being strong means daring to let someone stay.
loses everything. Sarah froze at the podium. She had thought that information was protected, buried under layers of legal confidentiality. They knew. Somehow they knew, and they weren't done. The next morning, military files appeared online. Garrett's name attached to accusations of unauthorized force, civilian casualties, dishonorable discharge. All of it fake, but devastating. Ex-Marine accused of war crimes. Sarah Blackwell's dangerous protector. The headlines multiplied like viruses. Garrett read the articles with cold eyes, his jaw rigid. This is fabricated. Half these dates don't even line up, but they don't need it to be real. He looked at Sarah. They just need people to believe it. Sarah's hands shook, not with fear, with fury. They're trying to isolate me, cut away everyone who stands with me. Then let me go. Garrett's voice was steady. Fire me publicly. Save yourself and Lily. Sarah's eyes flashed. She stepped toward him, her voice trembling with intensity. Don't you dare put me in the same category as the people trying to destroy us. You saved my daughter. You gave me back my sanity. I will protect your name as you protected mine. The board meeting was a bloodbath. 12 directors sat around the polished table, their faces hard, their voices sharp. The optics are catastrophic, one said. This man is accused of war crimes. You must distance yourself immediately. We're hemorrhaging investor confidence, another added. Every day you defend him costs us millions. Sarah stood at the head of the table, alone, the weight of their judgment pressing against her, but she didn't bend. Garrett Holloway has stood by me when every single one of you wanted to run. He is not a liability. He is my anchor. This is business, Serafina, not emotion. Then let me make it business. Her voice turned to steel. Either we weather this storm together, or I take this company private. My fortune built Blackwell Industries once. I will build it again, without any of you. Silence crashed through the room. They had pushed her to the edge, and instead of falling, she had pushed back. That night, Connor called his father. Garrett sat in the penthouse living room, the city glittering below, his son's face on the phone screen. Dad, are you scared? Garrett paused, then nodded. A little, buddy. Yeah. Connor's face was serious, too serious for 8 years old. That's okay, Dad. Brave people aren't people who aren't scared. Brave people are people who are scared but don't run away. Garrett's throat tightened. When did you get so smart? I read it in a book about astronauts. They're scared all the time, but they still go to space. Sarah stood in the doorway, listening, her eyes wet. Later, when the call ended, she spoke quietly. He's incredible, your son. He's his mother, Garrett said. All the best parts. The message came at midnight. Sarah's phone buzzed. Unknown number. Words that changed everything. You think you can fight me? I destroyed your husband. I destroyed Holloway's brother. And I will destroy you. The only question is whether your daughter goes down with you? Sarah's hands shook as she read the message again. The only question is whether your daughter goes down with you. Lily! He had threatened Lily. She handed the phone to Garrett, watched his face go white. He killed David. The words barely escaped his lips. Mercer killed my brother. And now he was coming for their children. This wasn't just war anymore. This was survival. Garrett's contacts worked through 2 sleepless nights. They traced every transaction, every email, every connection. The evidence piled up like a dam about to break. Shell companies funneling money to the collectors. Payments to tabloids for the fake military files. Internal emails from Mercer himself. Destroy Blackwell at any cost. And bury deepest of all. A police report. David Holloway's accident. Brake lines that had been cut. Evidence that was suppressed. Sarah stared at the files spread across her dining table. This is enough to destroy him. This is enough to put him in prison, Garrett corrected. Then let's make sure that happens. They went to Mercer's office, not to beg, not to negotiate, to deliver a warning. Howard Mercer sat behind his desk like a king on a throne. 58 years old, silver hair, eyes like polished steel. His office looked out over Seattle's harbor. $1 million views, $1 million art. Serafina Blackwell. He smiled, a cold, predatory expression. Finally decided to surrender in person? I'm not here to surrender. Sarah's voice was ice. I'm here to give you one chance. Withdraw everything. The collectors, the fake files, the media attacks, all of it. Mercer laughed. Or what? Or we release what we know, and you spend the rest of your life in a cell. Mercer leaned back in his chair. His fingers drummed the polished wood. You know what I did to your brother, don't you? He looked at Garrett, his smile widening. David was getting too close, asking too many questions. Such a tragedy. That accident. He paused, let the word hang. Brake lines are so unreliable these days. Garrett's hands curled into fists, but his voice stayed level. You're confessing to murder in front of witnesses. I'm confessing to nothing, just making conversation. Mercer stood, walked to the window. The harbor stretched below him like something he owned. Your brother was weak. Your husband was weak. He looked at Sarah. And you. You're drowning. Everyone can see it. Even your own board wants you gone. Then his voice dropped. Darker, more dangerous. Your little soldier boy thinks he can protect you? I'll bury him so deep his own son won't remember his father's name. Garrett stepped forward. One step. Just one. But the air in the room changed. Mercer's smile faltered. You just made a mistake, Mercer. Garrett's voice was quiet, dangerous. You brought my son into this. Sarah delivered the final blow. 48 hours. After that, we release everything. And Howard? My husband might have been afraid of you. I'm not. They walked out, left him standing in his throne room, his confidence cracking. 48 hours. The countdown had begun. The press conference filled the Marriott ballroom. 200 reporters, cameras from every network. The story had gone national. Sarah stood at the podium, Garrett at her side. She began simply, clearly. For months I have been silent while Howard Mercer tried to destroy my family. Today, that silence ends. She presented the evidence, slide by slide, email by email, transaction by transaction. The room grew quieter with each revelation. Gasps, murmurs, the clicking of keyboards as reporters filed breaking news. Then Sarah did something that would be replayed a million times. She reached for Garrett's hand, raised it high, their fingers intertwined. This man has protected my daughter, my company, my life. The files released about him are forgeries, created and paid for by Howard Mercer to isolate me. Her voice rang through the ballroom. I will protect his name as he has protected mine. If you want to call us guilty, then call us guilty of standing together. Silence, then applause, building like a wave, crashing through the room, voices rising, chanting, Blackwell, Blackwell, Blackwell. 2 weeks later, federal courthouse, Seattle. Howard Mercer sat at the defense table, his expensive lawyers beside him, his face a mask of controlled rage. But the evidence was overwhelming. Garrett's former colleagues testified, exposed every fabrication, every lie. Independent auditors confirmed the financial manipulation, the hidden transactions, the corporate sabotage, and finally the accident report, David Holloway. Brake lines cut, evidence suppressed, murder disguised as tragedy. The judge's voice echoed through the chamber. Howard Mercer, you are hereby remanded into federal custody pending trial for fraud, conspiracy, and suspicion of manslaughter. Marshals moved forward. Handcuffs clicked around Mercer's wrists. As they led him past Sarah and Garrett, he stopped, his face twisted with hatred. You think this is over? Garrett met his eyes, calm, steady, unbroken. For my brother, it's finally beginning. For you, a pause. It ended the moment you threatened my son. Outside the courthouse, late afternoon sun, golden light spilling across the stone steps. Connor came running across the plaza, threw himself into Garrett's arms. Dad, I saw it on TV. They arrested the bad guy. Garrett held his son tight, breathed in the smell of his hair, let the tears come. Sarah stood beside them, Lily in her arms. Connor looked up at her, his blue eyes bright. Miss Sarah, my dad used to have nightmares. He'd wake up crying because he thought he couldn't save anyone anymore. The boy's voice was steady, wise beyond his years. But now when he wakes up, he checks on Lily first, then he calls to check on me. Connor tilted his head. I think you fixed something inside him that was broken for a long time. And I think he fixed something inside you too. Sarah knelt down, eye level with the boy, her voice thick with emotion. You're right, sweetheart. He did. She looked up at Garrett. Their eyes met. The courthouse behind them, the future ahead. What happens now, she asked. That depends on you. She stood, reached for his hand, let their fingers weave together. Then let's find out, together. 1 year later, the nursery was quiet, soft amber light, white noise humming like distant rain. Sarah touched the ring on her finger, simple, white gold. Garrett had proposed 6 months ago on this very balcony, not with grand gestures or expensive diamonds, just the two of them. Lily asleep inside, Connor holding the ring box with trembling hands. Dad practiced like 100 times, Connor had whispered. He was so nervous. She had said yes before Garrett finished the question. Now she stood in the doorway of the nursery, watching. Garrett sat in the rocking chair, the same chair from that first midnight, but now he held 2 children. Lily on one side, 19 months old now. Her dark curls wild, her laugh quick and bright. And on the other side, a baby boy, 3 months old, sleeping peacefully against his father's chest. They had named him David, after the brother who never got justice, after the man who had started this story without ever knowing. Connor sat on the floor, a book about galaxies open in his lap. He pointed at pictures, explained constellations to Lily. She babbled back at him, reached for the pages, made him laugh. Mom, Connor called out. Lily says she wants to be an astronaut. Mom. The words still made Sarah's breath catch, still made her heart expand in ways she hadn't known possible. She walked into the room, sat on the arm of the rocking chair, leaned her head against Garrett's shoulder. Remember the first night? She asked softly. I was so angry. I thought you were an intruder. And now I know you were exactly what we needed. She looked at their children, at their family. Someone calm enough to tell us we were safe. Garrett smiled, not the half smile of survival, the full smile of a man who had finally stopped running. You know what Connor said to me last week? What? He said, Dad, I think our family isn't broken anymore. I think we found all the pieces and made something new. Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. Happy tears. The best kind. She looked around the nursery, at the rocking chair where everything began, at the crib where Lily once screamed through endless nights, at the family that grew from a single moment of desperate hope. The note was still on the refrigerator. Faded now, but the words still visible. Kiss before call. She had followed that advice every single day. The city stretched below the penthouse windows. Seattle at dusk, lights beginning to flicker on like earthbound stars. Sarah and Garrett stood on the balcony, the children asleep inside, the world finally quiet. I used to think I had to do everything alone, Sarah said, that asking for help meant weakness, that letting someone in meant losing control. Garrett's arm tightened around her. And now I know the bravest thing I ever did was answer the door that night, was let a stranger hold my daughter, was trust someone when everything in me screamed not to. She turned to face him, her hands on his chest, her eyes holding his. You didn't just save Lily, Garrett. You saved me. We saved each other. His voice was rough, thick with emotion. That's what families do. Families. A year ago, she didn't have one. Not really. Just a penthouse and a fortune and a screaming baby and endless lonely nights. Now she had a husband, 2 sons, a daughter, a life built on trust and sacrifice and love born in fire. Connor asked me something this morning, Garrett said. What? He asked if Lily would remember the bad times, the crying, the fear, the nights you thought you'd never survive. What did you tell him? I told him no. Babies don't remember the darkness. They only remember who held them through it. Sarah's breath caught. She thought of Lily, growing up surrounded by love, never knowing the terror of those first 7 months, never understanding how close everything came to breaking. She thought of David, the baby boy named for a man he would never meet, growing up with stories of an uncle who fought for justice, who paid the ultimate price. She thought of Connor, the wise little soul who saw everything, who understood more than anyone gave him credit for, who had helped heal his father's broken heart just by being brave enough to love. And she thought of Garrett, the stranger who walked into her nursery at midnight, who refused to let her give up, who counted to 30 and then 30 again, who taught her that sometimes salvation comes in the quietest forms. I love you, she said, the words simple, true. I love you too. He pulled her close. All of you, every broken piece. They stood there as the stars appeared above the city, as the night wrapped around them like a promise. The story of the billionaire single mom and the single dad veteran didn't end with a scandal. It began with one. Because sometimes the people who save us aren't the ones we expect. Sometimes they show up at midnight, in a frayed sweater, with nothing but steady hands and a quiet voice. And sometimes, if we're brave enough to let them stay, they become exactly what we were missing all along. Not a hero, not a savior, just someone who knows how important it is not to let go.
This story leaves us with a profound moral lesson about love, responsibility, and the connection between people during life's most fragile moments. It reminds us that parenting isn't about perfection or controlling everything, but about learning to be present at the right time, calm enough and loving enough to be a safe haven for our children. The child in the story doesn't need money, fame, or flashy parenting methods. What they need is a stable embrace, a steady rhythm of breathing, and the feeling of being protected. Therefore, parental love isn't measured by the ability to do things right, but by the ability to hold on even when exhausted. The story also reveals a heartbreaking but very human truth. Sometimes those who seem to have it all are the loneliest and most vulnerable. The wealthy, outwardly strong mother is actually slowly sinking into exhaustion and self-reproach. The lesson here is, don't judge others' lives by their outward appearances. The empathy and sensitivity of those around them, like the single father who entered their lives, can become a lifeline at the right moment, saving a family from collapse without the need for grand heroic acts. The love in the story is not loud or ostentatious. It is shown through very small things, counting a child's breaths, placing a hand on a child's chest for a few extra seconds, kissing a child before returning to work. It is these simple actions that create a solid moral foundation for a family, where children grow up feeling safe and valued. Ultimately, the story conveys the message that society is better when people can see each other's pain and are willing to stay, instead of turning their backs. Those around us, whether a domestic helper, a stranger, or a child, can all become a healing bridge if we are humble enough to listen and brave enough to trust. Love, ultimately, is not about the power to possess, but about the patience to protect and overcome the darkness together.